This is Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get on. No choice. Big on mandate. Get it on, and welcome to the best hour or so on the pod world. It is Reasonable Doubt. I'm Adam Carolla. That's Mark Garrigus over there, and we have a very special
We've got a very
guest.
special guest. In fact, I was going to say he looks fantastic today, and he's social distancing literally, as he was just telling us, in Martha's Vineyard. Why don't you explain to the Reasonable Doubt listeners why you're social distancing?
It's Alan Dershowitz, by the way.
Yeah.
Almost everybody on Martha's Vineyard, certainly in our neighborhood, are very, very hard left, anti-Trump, mostly Hollywood, knee-jerk, leftists.
Right.
And I'm a liberal. I'm a liberal Democrat. I've never voted Republican in my life. But the fact that I dared to go in front of the United States Senate and as a lawyer represent the President of the United States and the Constitution put me beyond the pale. So social distancing is easy. Nobody wants to talk to me.
I read an article today, Alan. I don't know if you've seen it. I want to say it was in Law 360, and it was basically eulogizing Steve Sussman, who was a Texas trial lawyer of some repute. Yeah. And he said when he was, that right before he died, he tragically had a bicycle accident and then contracted corona, and he died. And he was putting together a book when he was dying, before he died. And the book was going to be about you and Rudy Giuliani and Ken Starr. And the fact that lawyers of that generation do foolish things as they get older. And that was going to be the subject. And in the same article, I found this just fascinating. He said he almost called up Adam Schiff in order to volunteer his services to prosecute Trump. And it was like, wait, Alan is foolish for defending Trump, but you wanted to prosecute. I mean, that's the insane.
Well, he may have a point. I may be getting foolish. I'm almost 82 years old. I'm the oldest person in American history ever to defend the president in front of the Senate. I was the youngest person in Harvard's history to become a full professor. So now I've run the cycle, the youngest to the oldest. Look, I defended President Clinton. I defended candidate Vice President Al Gore. I would have defended Hillary Clinton. If she had been elected president, the Republicans would have gone after her and they would have impeached her. And if they had impeached her on impermissible constitutional grounds, I would have been there for her. I never mentioned the name Trump in my defense in the Senate, never mentioned it once. I was there on behalf of the Constitution. I was there to prevent the Senate from following the abuse of Adam Schiff and the House by impeaching the president on non-constitutional grounds. The framers had a great debate in when they framed the Constitution. And somebody introduced a resolution to have impeachment based on maladministration. And Madison, part of their Constitution, got up. No, don't do that. That would make the president serve at the pleasure of the Senate. That's not what we want. We don't want a British parliamentary system with votes of confidence. We want to have very solid criteria for impeachment, treason defined in the Constitution, bribery, we all know what that means, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, which means crimes like treason and bribery. If the framers wanted maladministration or abuse of power or obstruction of Congress, they would have put it in there. So I was there defending the Constitution.
I've made the argument on this show, and Adam's heard it 100 times, that it's astonishing to me because, as you know, as you were defending Clinton, I was defending McDougal back during Whitewater, and we were making the same arguments back then, and the left loved us. They loved you. They loved me. The wind at our back. When you make the same arguments now and you have any kind of consistency, you've crossed some ideological litmus test or barrier.
You want to hear something very interesting? The original title from my book, which I published as The Case Against Impeaching Trump, the original title was The Case Against Impeaching Hillary Clinton. I started writing it. I got my contract to write it in the run-up to the 2016 election when the Republicans were saying, lock her up, impeach her. We're going to impeach her on day one, on January 20th. I started writing a book as to why impeachment is not the proper mechanism for removing a controversial president. Well, the election didn't turn out as many people expected. Exactly. And so I just changed the title of the book and I changed a few words, but the arguments were exactly the same. If I had been on the other side, if Hillary Clinton had been elected and she had been impeached, they would be building a statue to me on Martha's Vineyard.
You'd never pay for dinner again.
I know.
You'd be drinking Mac 25 out of the faucet. I mean, nonstop out of a fire hose. You know, it's interesting. How do you come down on the part where I'm torn with this Department of Justice? As I tried a case earlier this year where, to my mind, the Department of Justice was just outrageous in what they were doing and what they were holding back. And they've got this they've got an idiotic idea that the Central District of California is not part of the same law firm as, you know, some guys out of Maine Justice. So therefore, we don't have to disclose Brady or Giglio material if we're here. But even if the government had it somewhere else and blah, blah, blah.
Oh, my God. Really?
Yes.
Could argue that.
That's the argument that is made, which makes me want to run headlong into a cement wall. They disclosed yesterday more Brady Giglio material that they sat on one of their prosecution witnesses who was under indictment and was doing secretly under indictment, and they didn't think they had to disclose it because this parallel investigation was not run by them, which is insane.
Which is outrageous.
It's completely outrageous. So I ask you, what about something like what is happening with Emmett Sullivan and Flynn, where do you think, and because I've known Emmett Sullivan and been a fan of his since Ted Stevens,
Me
right?
too. Yeah.
I mean, he's somebody, for people who are in the weeds like you and I are, he issues a Brady order that is like nothing I've ever seen, holding the government. And I thought that 2-1 decision, I had real problems with it. I mean, at one hand, part of me is more, you know, anytime you can get a dismissal, obviously you want a dismissal. I'm all for it. I like the Department of Justice investigating. But at the same time, here's a judge who wants to know, why is this guy pleading guilty twice in front of me? I want to have a hearing. I'd like to know what's going on. Where do you fall on that?
Well, I think that the Constitution says that the federal judges have jurisdiction only over cases and controversies. And the Supreme Court, just this term, in a decision by Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who I hope is recovering quickly from the recurrence of her cancer, said in her opinion, judges don't have a roving commission to do justice. That's up to the Justice Department. It's up to the legislature. Judges are umpires. The pitcher throws a pitch, the batter swings. Was it a stop swing? Was it a full swing? Cases and controversies. So I think Judge Sullivan went beyond his authority, because when the Justice Department agrees and the defendant agrees, he should have no jurisdiction. Now, he could refer the case to the legislature and say, look, I don't like this. This smells, but I'm not the one to have a hearing here. And where I think he went way too far is hiring another lawyer, a former judge, to appeal on his own behalf. He took off his robe at that point and became an advocate and a litigant. Imagine what happens if the case gets sent back to him now. He couldn't possibly sit. He's an advocate. He was an adversary himself in the situation. So although I have a lot of respect for Judge Sullivan, I think he went off the rails there.
This is what I wonder, though. I assume, and push back if you think differently, I assume that the reason that it is evolved in federal court, where they put you under oath and they do the kind of the talismanic recitation of your waiving your rights, is so that you can't do a 2255 and come back and say, he promised me this, blah, 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 you know, to insulate them from an endless pursuit of writs. So if he says, well, wait a second here, that is a contempt that was committed in front of me, I've got the ability to investigate that contempt. What do you say to that?
I don't agree with that. First of all, lawyers, as you know, we plead our clients guilty all the time, even if we know they're innocent. If the prosecutor says to me, I'm going to give your guy 10 years if he pleads not guilty and wins, and he may, but I'm going to give him 6 months if he pleads. I go to my client and say, you have no choice here. And he says, but I'm not guilty. I didn't do it. I said, yeah, you'll have plenty of time to tell that to your family when you're home with them, instead of doing the 10 years. So if you start holding lawyers in contempt and defendants in contempt for pleading guilty when they did it under pressure, in this case, Flynn was told that they would go after his son, they would go after his assets, etc. I just think the case should be allowed to go away. Now, he's a gutsy guy, because here's the possible real negative scenario. Let's assume they send it back to the Justice Department. And at this point, there's no longer President Trump. Trump has been defeated for re-election by Biden. He's not getting pardoned at that point. And so Stone, the same thing. Stone is appealing instead of taking his commutation and going home. That's a lot of guts, because he's not going to get the pardon a second time or the commutation a second time. But look, these problems of withholding evidence don't only apply to the government. I'm now involved in a case where I'm being sued and suing a very distinguished and prominent lawyer, David Boies, who submitted over and over again perjured false affidavits from clients who he knew were perjuring themselves. I mean, a woman who accused me of having sex with her 7 times who I never met. Boies knows that, because I have him on tape saying that she's wrong, simply wrong, and she couldn't have been in the places she said I was. And we recently found a disclosure that one of the women who he's touting all over, puts her on Netflix, he brings her to the federal court, he submits affidavits on her behalf. Listen to what she said on television the other day. She said, "I have a real problem with Jews, all Jews. I don't like Jews. They think they're superior to everybody else. They think their DNA is better than anybody else. Every Jew I met is a pedophile and controls the wealth of the world." And then he said, and of course, Jeffrey Epstein was just a stooge for the Israeli Mossad. They hired him to take videos of prominent American politicians so that Israel could make America do what it wants. This is the woman who David Boies submitted an affidavit on behalf of, never, ever disclosing all this background, which we, of course, had to go to great lengths to discover.
So
can I just say this?
Let Adam jump in.
Well, the
here.
bad news is she's an anti-Semite, but the good news is she's got a tryout with the Eagles coming up this Monday. I don't know if you guys heard about that. They're looking for a possession type receiver.
For those who don't know, that's David Boies of Boies Schiller, who famously has his law firm is disintegrating as we're talking. I mean, it should
disintegrate. I believe that his law firm is a RICO, and I'm thinking seriously about filing a RICO charge against the law firm. The law firm itself has been a racketeer enterprise. David Boies has used it as a racketeering enterprise. What he did in the Theranos case was outrageous. What he did to a woman named Klein, sending her a complaint in which he reveals all of her personal sexual life and saying he was going to file it unless they submitted to an extortionate bid. Going to Leslie Wexner and saying to Leslie Wexner, Alan Dershowitz has been accused. If you don't want to be accused, hey, there are ways of resolving this. We're now in a lawsuit where I'm going to prove all of those allegations. This man should be disbarred. I brought bar charges against him in 3 jurisdictions, but he managed to weasel out. In one case, the bar found that what he and his partner had done was unlawful, but since he wasn't a member of the Florida bar, they couldn't go after him. No lawyer in America today has more ethics charges against him than David Boies. It's a scandal that he's still allowed to practice law, and I'm going to bring all that out.
It's very interesting. Your present lawsuit is where? Southern District?
I have 2 lawsuits. One, she sued me. Imagine being sued for claiming that I didn't have sex with somebody I never met. She's suing me for defamation.
And the woman who's suing you is, what's her name? That's
Virginia Gouffre,
right?
Who claims to have sex with me 7 times.
Right.
I never met her in my life. And then David Boies is suing me in state court for defamation. So I'm being sued for telling the truth. And, I've been fighting for the First Amendment all of my life. The idea that if somebody says, you're a pedophile, you have sex with young people, I can't say, no, I never met her. That constitutes defamation now, because I'm essentially calling her a liar if I say I never met her. But I never met her. Fortunately,
most of this started, as I remember, tell me if I'm wrong, most of this started back over the plea arrangement you did in Florida for Epstein, right? And then
with a bunch of prominent lawyers,
right?
With Roy Black and with
Ken Starr. right?
Penn Star and with a whole bunch of good people, we got a good deal.
Right.
Jeffrey, by the way, didn't think it was a good deal. He tried to fire me. And he didn't want to pay my fee because he said you should have gotten a better deal. So, it's always in the eye of the
Well,
deal.
I was going to say, that doesn't come as a shock to me that a client wasn't satisfied when you get him the hell of a deal. I always say the people you do the most for are usually the ones who are least appreciative. I don't know
of course.
what that is.
Epstein was very unappreciative.
And then as I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just going off memory and I wish I had done more homework, but wasn't there somebody who sued under the victims?
That's right. So
right?
she sued and she tried to get into the case and she alleged that she had sex with me. The judge immediately struck it and sanctioned the lawyers for putting it in. Then the lawyers withdrew it and the case was over. The case was over.
So then, what was it, like a Rule 11 safe harbor where you'd motion to strike?
No. Everything was over. And then the Me Too movement started. And the Me Too movement started, and Gouffre got a public relations person. She went on television all over the place, and now I had to defend myself. So I had to, and in the original lawsuit, we subpoenaed any of her emails that mentioned my name or anything in writing that mentioned my name. She deep-sixed it. She did what the government often does. She pretended there were no emails with my name. Then we discovered that there were emails with my name in which she essentially admitted she never met me, smoking gun emails. And then there's a manuscript of a book where she said she had sex with everybody under the sun. She had sex with Senator George Mitchell. She had sex with Bill Richardson. She had sex with Leslie Wexner. She had sex with Ehud Barak, the Prime Minister of Israel. Guess who she never had sex with in the book?
Alan Dershowitz.
She never mentions me in the book. She says she saw me once, but never had sex with me. She tried to suppress all that material. I now have that material. But even in the face of that material, she's suing me for defaming her by simply telling you the truth. I can't wait for the trial and the deposition.
Alan,
the depositions.
Alan, can we talk a little less legal and a little more social? If you don't mind. I was involved with a movie called No Safe Spaces with Dennis Prager. He came to your apartment, I think, in Manhattan.
He's terrific. Dennis and I come from the same background, same neighborhood. I think we played basketball on opposing teams. He was much smaller, but I was a better shooter.
He oftentimes cites you as someone, he's trying to draw a definition or division between on the left and liberal. And I think he looks at himself as a conservative liberal. I look at myself as a liberal. I know Mark thinks he looks at himself as liberal. You look at yourself as liberal, but not left. And I'm
anti-left. I'm anti-hard left because the left doesn't believe in free speech. The hard left doesn't believe in due process, doesn't believe in tolerance. It believes in identity politics. I'm a genuine liberal. I have a new book that's just come out called The Case for Liberalism in an Age of Extremism, or Why I Left the Left but Couldn't Join the Right. And I tell my story about why I feel politically homeless today. By the way, my other book, which you can get free on Kindle, tells the story of this false accusation against me. It's called Guilt by Accusation, The Challenge of Proving Innocence in the Age of Me Too. Please get that free. I don't get any royalties. Just read it because I want you to be as convinced.
I have, and by the way, it's a wonderful, I guess, encapsulation of the erosion of due process, and it's unbelievable. And until you see it in action or live it, it's hard to really comprehend what just happens.
But it's interesting because both of us have been practicing law for 150 years. I only now really understand what it feels like to be falsely accused. I read about it in various books, in the Dreyfus case, but to experience it, to have your grandchildren attack and your children, and people write to my daughter today, emails, your dad's a pedophile, your dad's a baby, and then they use the F word. It's the most horrible feeling in the world. Fortunately, I have the resources to fight back, and I have all the evidence that I never met her. So my case is easy. Many other cases are very difficult.
There was I think it was an op-ed in the New York Times a million years ago. Maybe it was George McGovern. I may have gotten my politicians swapped out. But on these lines, he worked in government, saved up some money, wanted to go start his own basically bed and breakfast somewhere, and then realized with all the regulations and taxes and all the hurdles he had to jump through, he couldn't make it profitable. And he basically said, I wish I knew all this when I was a legislator. I wish I knew how. I wish I had the experience of trying to start a small business when I was the one who was making all the rules that made it difficult for a small business to get started. And I think that's kind of what you're saying as an attorney, that you're...
It's true. It's true. Yeah. You know, John Mitchell, the
former attorney general
to,
during Nixon.
Right, who went to jail. There was a great cartoon in one of the newspapers. Here he is wearing his stripes and behind bars, and said, why didn't I do prison reform while I had a chance to do it?
Right.
But there's something about that. I've had famously several search warrants executed on the office. I had last year that whole brouhaha, which, by the way, also David Boies was right there, the Boies Schiller, once again. And so it really does give you an appreciation for just when the system is out of control, or when the system maybe is in control, of what a frightening thing it can be.
Yeah, and there's no way to go to investigate. When I brought bar charges against Boies, I had all the evidence, all the documentation. Not a single bar would even bother to investigate him. I gave them every document. I proved beyond any doubt that there was an extortion plot. Nobody wanted to investigate. I brought my case to the U.S. attorney, to the district attorney, to the FBI. I wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal saying, FBI, please investigate me. When's the last time you heard anybody ask to be investigated by the FBI? I want to be investigated by the FBI on condition that they also investigate my accuser. I invited the FBI to come to the trial. I said, you're going to see perjury committed in front of you. I will swear under oath that I never met this woman, and she will swear and describe in great detail the 7 sexual encounters we had in places in the world that I've never been. So one of us will commit perjury, and I want you, the FBI, to be there and decide which of us. You know, usually you don't indict people for perjury committed at a deposition. So people lie like mad. But the government has now indicted Ghislaine Maxwell, on 2 counts of perjury in the very same civil trial in which my accuser committed perjury.
Yeah,
and so this is a good opportunity for them to
Which is what I was going to get to. What do you think about that indictment? Because I don't know that people understand, and you can describe it. I won't step all over you. You describe what that indictment is, because it's astonishing in some ways.
It's an astonishing indictment. First, it starts with back when. How old are you now? You must have been 12 when these charges came up. They indict him for what happened in 1994.
Exactly. 94 to 97, right? 94
to 7. 1994 to 1997.
We're talking about Maxwell.
Maxwell, yes.
All right.
Yeah, I never even met Epstein at that point, but those periods of time. And they're going to have to argue it's not beyond the statute of limitations. They're going to have to argue it's not included within the immunity provisions that were given as part of the deal. So because they have real problems with 1994 to 1997, they also indicted her for perjury in a civil deposition in a civil case committed in 2016 when she denied knowing that Jeffrey Epstein had sex toys in his bedroom.
Right.
And so there's going to be a lot of issues.
And as you say, my father used to call family law the battle of the perjuries, but you might as well just expand it to the civil law, which is a battle of the perjuries, because every deposition, everybody lies through their teeth. It's an astonishing thing to watch.
And you and I know that there are unethical lawyers, and, the initials DB come to my mind whenever I think of a lawyer.
And you're not referring to an Aston Martin. Right.
Unethical. There are lawyers who tell their clients, look, you don't have to worry about what you say in a civil deposition. They're never going to come after you. They're never going to come after you. Look, there's a journalist in Florida, the Miami Herald, a woman who broke this whole story open, a woman named Julie Brown. She had the nerve to send me an email urging me to break the law. In the email, she says, I want you to give me sealed material. I write back and I say, I can't give you sealed material. it's in violation of the law. She writes back, she says, well, everybody else is giving me sealed material. They won't come after you. Yeah. And so I'm filing a grievance with her newspaper. Here she is urging me to violate the law. Of course, I said I wouldn't do it. But, there's so much lawlessness that goes on. And then they come after, an honest lawyer like me. Look, I have had sex with one woman since the day I met Jeffrey Epstein, my wife. I don't flirt. I don't touch. I don't hug. I'm not Joe Biden with the hair. I'm not,
You're Mike Pence.
Well, I'm closer to Mike Pence. I have to tell you, when I was teaching at Harvard, people complained because I didn't have lunch with female students alone. I just didn't think, I wasn't comfortable doing that. It started when I was a single man. I was single when I was teaching for 10 years at Harvard, and I just didn't want anybody to get the wrong impression. I stopped doing that. I started having lunch with groups of people because I didn't want people to charge me with having sex with a single male student, having lunch with a single male student, but not being willing to have lunch with a single female student. So I stopped that. But I think there are a lot of people today, and if a client asked me today, a business client asked me today, in the age of Me Too, I would have to tell them, you're better off facing a sex discrimination lawsuit for refusing to have lunch with a single woman than you are facing a sexual harassment lawsuit for doing something improper at that lunch. People are going to have to make those judgments.
Can I ask a question, which is, obviously you were a darling of the left for many, many years. I mean, decade upon decade. I'm literally like a sort of poster child for the left. And then in recent years, you ran afoul of them. And running afoul of them could just mean standing up for the Constitution, but whatever, or maybe you like the Gorka beans or whatever that place is, whatever. It's very easy to run afoul of them. Have you found, so socially, obviously it's been difficult because that was your circle.
No, let me tell you, it's been great because it made me understand who my real friends were and who the phonies are. I don't have time in my life for these phonies. The interesting thing is I never should have been the darling of the left because I was never a leftist, never, ever a leftist. I agree in civil liberties. I agree with liberalism, but I'm not a lefty guy. And because most of my civil liberties cases were on behalf of lefties, people who were against the Vietnam War. I was against the Vietnam War, but I wasn't willing to avoid the draft. I wasn't willing to burn my draft card. I wasn't willing to engage in violent protests, but I defended a lot of them. I defended the, Chicago 7. So the left loved me for all the wrong reasons because they thought I was one of them. Now, when the test came, it was clear I was never one of them. I was always a liberal civil libertarian who put the Constitution over politics.
Do you find that there's an extra scrutiny being paid to you now? Do you find yourself sort of in the crosshairs? Do you find that some of these proclamations, some of these claims against you, timing-wise, seem to be popping up now, allegations, accusations that wouldn't have formerly existed if you didn't run afoul of that group?
Oh, there's no doubt about that. And you see it on the Twitter and in my emails, people saying, you supported Trump, I'm willing to believe that you're a pedophile. That's the logic. Or you supported Trump, I don't care if you're a pedophile. I want you to be found to be one because that will hurt Trump and it will punish you for supporting Trump. I get it about Trump. I also get it on behalf of Israel. I would say that maybe a third of my tweets are either anti-Israel or anti-Semitic, mostly anti-Israel. You support Israel. Oh, my favorite tweet is, you rape children the way Israel rapes the Palestinians. I get that a lot.
If you had to rate I'm going to give you three clients, OJ, Trump, and Epstein. Where do you rank them in terms of the amount of grief that you've taken?
Oh, Epstein, without a doubt, because that's where the personal accusation came. The others, I have a thick skin. OJ doesn't even count. He's not even on that. Right. I mean, OJ belongs with Mike Tyson and Leona Helmsley and, so many other people, Klaus von Bülow. You get a little grief, but that's okay. Trump and Epstein. But when you combine both of them, and they both happened when I was 80 years old, changed my life dramatically, because the two kind of came together, and it caused tensions in my family. My family all support me. They all love me, but they're all anti-Trump people in my family. They're all people who think Trump should have been, I don't say impeached, because they listened to my argument and they know that there was no impeachable offense, but they wish he weren't president. I just don't take political positions when I'm a lawyer. And so there's tension within my family and tension among my friends, but my friends have stuck with me. They, my real friends, they disagree with me, and they write me long emails disagreeing with me. And I write back saying, you have a point sometimes. But the Hollywood crew, the Martha's Vineyard crew, the Chilmark crew, the ones who won't talk to me, the ones who ask me to help their kids get into college, the ones who asked me to bail their kids out at 3 a.m. from a drunken driving,
exactly.
The ones who asked me to represent their father who was under investigation by the SEC, they have forgotten about all of that, and Trump trumps it all. So now I am beyond the pale. Wait until they get in trouble again. They'll be back.
It's so funny.
I picture Alan and Matt Lauer just sitting alone.
I was just thinking it's so funny.
Matt Lauer, don't put me in the same category. Everybody else who has been accused by the Me Too movement at least knew the people that they were accused with.
Yeah, exactly. Matt said it was consensual. Yours is I've never even met her.
No, I was just thinking. I was thinking Martha's Vineyard pariah, not legally.
Well, my friend on Martha's Vineyard, I used to be friends with all the Mike Wallace and all of those guys. Many of them conservative, some of them liberal. But the Chilmark crowd is just so intolerant. They don't need speech or due process because they have truth. They know truth. They know if you're a man, you're guilty. If you're a white man, an old white man, you're on the wrong side of identity politics. Why do we need trials? If a woman accuses you, why do we need a trial? Women are genetically predisposed to tell the truth, and men are genetically predisposed to lie, particularly white men, and white men who support Israel and white men who defended Trump. My God, could there be anything worse?
Can I ask you a last question? And I'll kind of put it out for both of you. It popped in my head when you were talking about civil liberties. What has happened to the ACLU?
Oh, yeah, right. The ACLU, the Anti-Civil Liberties Union. The Anti-Civil Liberties Union is doing a great job. Let me first give them credit. They're doing a great job trying to get prisoners with COVID out of prison. They're doing a very good job on prison reform. I still contribute to the ACLU because of the work they do for prisoners. But the ACLU has become a hard left organization that has made a fortune on its anti-Trump campaign. They refuse to go after any politically incorrect positions. They don't speak up about college campuses, repression, the lack of due process, the lack of free speech on college and university campuses. Once every 5 years, they defend a Nazi, and they take out ads in all the papers. Hey, we defended a Nazi. Look how objective we are. It's so easy to defend a Nazi. It's so much harder to defend a conservative like, Ben Shapiro when he's banned on a college campus. Where's the ACLU when that happens? They're nowhere to be seen. They're dead in the water. And what we need is a new organization, a real civil liberties organization that's not political. I was on the national board of the ACLU when Nixon was impeached. I was in favor of Nixon's impeachment because he had committed impeachable offenses, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, bribery, all of that. He had committed impeachable offenses. But I took a position at the ACLU national board that they shouldn't take a position on Nixon's impeachment because it's political. They should instead be there to make sure that his civil liberties were protected, that he shouldn't be named, for example, as an unindicted co-conspirator. Because when you name somebody as an unindicted co-conspirator, they have no way of fighting back. It's just like putting a billboard up. You can't make a motion to get yourself out of being
the mother of the judge hasn't been born that's going to do something there. I'm going to leave you with one last question. Where do you come out on our current attorney general and the efforts to replace Jeff Berman in the Southern District?
Well, it's a close question. I didn't like a number of the things that Berman did. I didn't like him parading the women around and having them have their day in court when, in fact, Epstein was dead and the court had no jurisdiction over him. I think that was exceeded his authority. Look, I don't like presidents naming U.S. attorneys on political grounds. I don't think presidents should even be picking U.S. attorneys. If I had to create a system, I'd create much more of a civil service system. I don't like elected prosecutors. I don't like elected judges.
Elected prosecutors and elected judges, it's got to be the worst thing that I don't even know. It just makes absolutely no sense because all they do is just put their finger up in the wind and that's it. Yeah.
Of course. That's why I want to see a non-politicized criminal justice system, one that can't be weaponized politically, can't be used to help people get reelected. We have a lot of reforms, and thank God we have lawyers like Mark Geragos out there fighting every day. He is the last barrier to liberty, the criminal defense lawyer and his law firm who stand up for liberty, who stand up to the government, who take no nonsense from them, who fight back at every term. You are a real hero. You're a hero of mine, and you should live to at least 120 and keep fighting for our rights. And don't expect to win too many popularity contests in the process.
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate that. Thank you for coming on also.
Thanks for coming on.
Sure.
The
Anytime.
book, by the way, thank you very much for coming in. The book, or coming on, Guilt by Accusation, The Challenge of Proving Innocence in the Age of Me Too, and that's available
free on Kindle. Free on
Kindle. And a website, alan-dershowitz.com, and shoot him a tweet. Calling him a pedophile Palestinian hater at Alan Dersh. That's Alan Dersh, if you like.
Follow him because he's got one of the best Twitter feeds around.
Yes.
Now I can't sue anybody who does that because you invited them to do it.
Oh, sorry. I rescind that.
It's okay.
Bye, Alan.
Hey,
thank you so much.
Having good talk, and thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Alan. Wow, such an interesting guy. It's so spry. I think it's what happens when Alan treats his brain like Jack LaLanne treated his body, which
exactly.
is he gets up every morning at 5 and swims 200 laps and then does 1,000 push-ups, and he never got old.
He's the most prolific writer that you will ever find, and he's still. I pick his brain periodically on cases because he just has, ever since my father passed or had his first stroke, you need somebody who's got that kind of breadth and depth of and creativity that he's got. He's just an amazing, amazing resource. And everything, there will be people who hate him. There will be people who say that he's, kind of past his prime or this or that. No, that's because you may not agree with everything he says. He's thoughtful. He's principled. He has not lost it. I've disagreed with him many times politically, all the time politically. But that doesn't mean that you can't respect his intellect, his curiosity, or as you say, his motor. His motor's still going at 80 whatever. I mean, it's incredible.
Coming up on 82. All right, let me hit Upstart.com. Getting into debt is easy. Getting out, well, that's difficult. So Upstart.com is a revolutionary lending platform that knows you're more than just a credit score. They offer you smarter interest rates and help you pay off the high interest credit card debt. So you got the credit card debt, you're paying a ton in interest rates, and you want to get going with Upstart. Goes beyond credit score when assessing credit worthiness. They reward you based on education and job history. It's not just staring at your FICO score. Fast, simple, easy. You can check your rate and do it quickly, and it won't affect your credit score. Once the loan is approved and accepted, most people get their funds in the next business day. So over 400,000 people have used Upstart to pay off credit cards or meet financial goals, I should say. It's Upstart, right, Gary?
That's absolutely right. See why Upstart is top ranked in their category with a 4.9 out of 5 rating on Trustpilot, and hurry to upstart.com/doubt to find out how low your Upstart rate is. Checking your rate only takes a few minutes. That's upstart.com/doubt.
So it's scary that we have this weaponized culture where if you get on the wrong side of it, then you get a target on your back. I never got the attacks. The whole Israel thing is always confusing to me. The fact that gets woven into everyone's platform seems bizarre to me.
Well, he's been an amazing proponent of Israel and thoughtful and written on it and lectures on it constantly and debates on it. And it is it's controversial. And it's controversial, as he says, because some of the same people who support him almost unflinchingly, or at least historically, are on the opposite side of that, because they've compared Israel and Palestine in that situation to other situations that they look down upon. And so he's unflinching in his beliefs, and he tries to hew to a consistent ideology, or consistent, maybe it's not even ideology, a worldview, as I think I would characterize it as. And he's creative, and he's, like I say, I can sit and talk to him about the law. I could do it for 24 hours and never get any sleep, because he's got that kind of curiosity and breadth of knowledge that you just don't find anymore. It's one of the reasons, I talk to him and then I think about conversations that I have with some young lawyers where I get so frustrated. I just get so out of my mind, where they don't have that intellectual curiosity about where is the law now? Where is it heading? What is this? What is that? I mean, it's if you're in there or you're in the fight and you want to use the law, and you want to use the law as the way it's meant to be, in the way that it was written, then you're somebody like Alan. But, and he's obviously, and I don't blame him, he's 80 years old. He's got a legacy.
He's going to turn 82.
Yeah, and he's got a legacy of just incredible cases. He ticks off, people don't even remember Leona Helmsley, the Queen of Mean.
Yeah.
But he did Mike Tyson, and when I represented Mike for years, and Mike used to always talk about how he wishes that Alan and I had defended him in the Indiana case. Which I would have loved. I mean, that's one of my great regrets, is that I haven't tried a case with Alan. But he's just he will be a historic figure in legal jurisprudence.
Here's a philosophical question. Attorneys, young attorneys, and then there's young journalists. And I've realized, as we've seen in the newspapers, pardon the sort of pun, that the young journalists at the New York Times aren't really interested in journalism anymore. They're interested in justice. You know what I mean? And they want to shit can anyone over 35 who disagrees with them. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, this is not journalism. You going after people you disagree with, or firing editors because they had an op-ed piece or whatever. Are young attorneys also getting bit by this same bug? I have written in the book, which was, 7 years ago, but I wrote law review articles about how in the old days, the whole idea of being a journalist was you question authority, you challenge authority, you do, the Watergate kind of, the intrepid reporters. And at some point, kind of OJ, kind of Gary Condit, Scott Peterson, that kind of milieu, reporters became cheerleaders for the prosecution. And the prosecution is nothing more than authority. I mean, that's what authority is. And when that happened, that was a precursor for what we see now. And that is, I always thought that was I used to refer to, I haven't used the line in a long time, the advent of the bleach blonde former prosecutor. That was the advent of this cheerleading kind of rah-rah for the government. And that is a dangerous thing. That is because it's seeped into, and journalism kind of lost its way to the same degree to that, as you mentioned, some lawyers learn their law from watching Suits, or they think that it's kind of Boston legal. And as Alan was talking about with ethics, one of the most frustrating things in the world is when people pick and choose. It's Gary wants you into the mic tighter.
Yeah,
I feel like people can hear him outside the building.
When people pick and choose what they want to do ethically as a lawyer, it's a real problem because
journalists and lawyers, it's kind of the same thing, which is you're there to do your job, not preside over a popularity contest. And since that has now bled over into every facet of life, then that's going to affect being a journalist or being a lawyer.
Well,
now.
and if you start...
And a judge.
Right.
And in everything.
If you start worrying about what people say about you, there's no way. Number one, it violates the oath you take as a lawyer. You're not supposed to determine stuff by how it's going to impact your reputation. You're supposed to do what's right, even when it's hard. And you're supposed to be dedicated first and foremost to your client. That when you start worrying about either are people going to like me or are people going to, should I take this case because people are going to hate me? I was laughing. I have the opposite. I want to take cases where I never have to go to one of a cocktail party again. But I say that jokingly because if that becomes a calculation, that's a problem. That you're not being a true lawyer.
Well, it's funny. I experience it as well. I had it on a sort of a micro level, but I was I have little snapshots in my head that just kind of stick, and they look at me as I look at them as little sort of turning points in our society. But about 3 years ago, I was vacationing in Hawaii with the kids and the family and the friends, and there was about 9-10 of us sitting around the table on the veranda at the brunch, and it was like someone's blowing a leaf blower across the way, the gardener. And somebody said, damn, those leaf blowers, they're so loud and this, that, and the other. And I said, yeah, they're illegal in California or in Los Angeles. But someone said, they're illegal? I said, yeah, they're illegal. And someone says, well, they never enforce it. How come they don't enforce it? I said, they don't enforce it because it's mostly Hispanics who run the leaf blower. The optics aren't good. It's a little bit of a hate crime. And it's as if the mayor and the governor, but the mayor doesn't want to look like he's coming down on the poor brown man. And that's the reason why they don't enforce it. And everyone just looked at me and went, oh, no. And I said, yeah, that's what's going on. And they were like, no, that's racist. And I said, that's what's going on. And they said, yeah, no, that's not what's going on. I said, look, they don't enforce it because they're Mexican, and they don't like the optics of coming down on the Mexicans because that's who's using the leaf blowers. The thing's been on the books for 15 years. No one's ever been handed out a ticket or summons. You've all gotten tickets for parking on a 2% grade, not having your steering wheel, your fucking wheels pointed toward Mecca. They don't enforce it because it's, and everyone at the table turned on me. The whole fucking table turned on me, and they're like, Adam, be quiet. You don't know what you're talking about. Lynette's going, shh, don't listen to him. I go, I'm not making this up. It's what's going on. Yeah, okay, old man, racist guy. I said, go look it up in the fucking Los Angeles Times. I'm not, okay. I finally turned to one of the girls that was like, protesting the loudest. And I said, then you tell me why this thing has been on the books in a place that's ticket happy, where they write you tickets for jaywalking 2 million times a day. How come no one's ever given a ticket out to one of these guys using a leaf blower? And she's like, I don't know, but I know you're wrong, and I don't have to, and whatever it is. I was like, God, we just jumped the fucking shark. Everyone at the table hated me. It ruined my waffles.
Was that the last time you've ever been to Hawaii?
It probably was. I had to go fucking find the article and send it to everyone from the Times from 7 years earlier that basically said there was a million Mexican march on downtown when they did outlaw leaf blowers. But I know that feeling of having everyone at the table turn on you, including your own. And it's like, I had to go sit at the fucking kids' table. But the point is,
the kid says, "What's that? Why are you?
But listen, my thing is like, excuse me for telling the truth. I'm sorry. I didn't know I wasn't allowed to express myself because it's unpopular or because you don't like the words I've chosen or you don't believe this narrative. Although you don't have your own. I'm wide open. You explain to me why there's 1,000 leaf blowers going at any given time in our neighborhood and no summons has ever been handed out. If, in fact, there's a rule. There is rules about what you can do with your car. If your car's one bumper into the blue zone, you're going to get a ticket.
Don't even get me started. Next week, I'll tell you my experience with the hot dog vendor, and I'll have that tape for Gary to play exclusively.
Let me hit. So I know what it's like to be on the unpopular side of the brunch table where Garagos resides.
Where I live.
Where you live.
I live on that side.
Sue the collector? Yeah, that's right. Over 40 million people are unemployed, and that means unpaid bills, but that doesn't mean debt collectors can be abusive trying to collect the debt. No. If the debt collector lies or is verbally abusive or tries to unfairly put you in a bad position, you don't have to put up with it. No. You can get legal help, and you can get it at suethecollector.com. Skilled consumer law attorneys will take care of you, and they'll take care of your case for free. They eliminate the debt you owe, pay up to $1,000, and erase any errors on your credit report that will be caused through no fault, I should say, of your own. So if you have those guys nipping at your heels and you want to take care of them, I would suggest suethecollector.com. Right, Gary?
That's right. Get a free attorney plus win up to $1,000 and get the debt erased forever. That's what the team at Sue the Collector can offer, and they never charge for their services. That's SueThecollector.com.
What else you got, Mark?
I think that's it. I just see Two Buck Chuck and Two Chin Vin just walked in with Gary over there. Do we have time to talk about one other thing, Gary? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to bring us back to downtown LA. We now have, you can't have inside dining. Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's been eliminated. You can, though, go outside. So I can put stuff outside. But, Gary, I think I sent you the thing. We put tables outside, and then the next thing that happened is we literally had a riot last week in front of the building. And I sent the tape to Gary. This is
out front of Tenney?
Out front of Engine, believe it or not.
Okay.
We had a riot right in front, probably, I'm going to guess about 70 cops, maybe 100, somewhere between 70 and 100 cops, as people were eating in the tables on the sidewalk. The cops came, shut everything down.
What was the riot based on?
I think there was a guy. Here we go. Gary's got it. Gary is just right on top of it. Can you see this going on? See that guy there on the ground?
Right.
See that wheelchair?
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
He was in a wheelchair.
Uh-huh.
That's in the bike lane in front of here?
Yeah, right there, right in front of the Engine Company.
And what happened? What happened with the riot?
There were some protesters. There was this guy in the wheelchair. Look at how this is Figueroa Boulevard, by the way. Was
it a Black Lives Matter thing?
I don't know what the protest was.
Yes.
Two Buck Chuck and Two Chin Vin just said yes. But look at that. It's just try doing business there on this sidewalk. And by the way, there was you're getting a better view there. I mean, literally, this is in the middle of the day, probably rush hour on Figueroa. And mind you, that guy in the background there, you're seeing the Korean Airlines building, which the owner of Korean Airlines spent, I think, $1.5 billion all cash to build that building. Do you think he's happy? It hasn't been operating for about 4 months, 5 months.
And for our podcast listeners, I'll tell you should probably go check this portion of the show out on YouTube. That's just a segment, Adam, from about a 5-minute video that is a lot longer and has a lot more in it. But I just laugh and smile at this point. If you really were a businessman who was concerned with making a living, when I've talked to you before, you would never do what I do. I just do it because I've apparently got some perverse challenge and I want to try to persevere in spite of every obstacle in the world. But nobody who was trying to make a living legitimately would ever do what we do.
Right. So you make your bones, obviously, as an attorney, and then this becomes it's more than a hobby, but if you needed this to keep the lights on at the Garagos Manor, this would be an unmitigated clusterfuck disaster.
First of all, the idea that and I mean this, I have to assign people almost full time to keep up with regulations with PPP. We got PPP funds to try to keep people employed, which was a great program conceptually and everything else. But try to follow the guidance at any one point. It's difficult. They try to keep it. They try to give you whatever there. But if you try to keep people employed, and then this idea that 1 minute you're operating, then on an hour's notice you're not operating. The governor says that's it. Sorry, you can't operate now. Okay, I'll try to go outside. I try to go outside. You just saw the tape of what happened. I went and bought a bunch of tables. We put the tables on the sidewalk. We started to serve outside, and then within 2 days of doing that, we've got a riot going on in front of the building, and at the same time, everybody wants to get paid. I don't blame them. I'm going to try to pay them, but you couldn't do that. Absent me subsidizing this and complying with all this, and having accountants and guys who are lawyers trying to figure out what you're trying to do, you couldn't run a business. They have successfully. By the way, there is not a single female that I know that works for me or that I know who works downtown who isn't either planning to leave downtown or hasn't already. Every single one of them. Am I right? Every single one. If you're a single female, you cannot live downtown anymore. It's just impossible.
Well, here's what I don't understand, and maybe you can shed some light on this.
Married female. I don't know why I'm saying single female. That shows how old-fashioned I am. If you're a female, you cannot survive downtown. You can't walk 2 blocks. You'll get knifed. You'll have some crazy person come after you. Being a female downtown is taking your life into your hands at any one time.
So you went for attempting to dine al fresco to al hobo, basically, is what happens in Los Angeles. But we did this experiment in New York, and New York was this, and then Giuliani came in, and he basically did his broken window and his stop and frisk, and it
Bill
stopped.
Bratton. Bill Bratton was, Bill Bratton was New York, and he was L.A., and then he's famously, I think, doing in the private sector.
And it's someone who works both sides of this fence, who protects those who are stopped unlawfully and searched unlawfully and so on and so forth. They have their civil liberties sort of infringed upon by the powers that be. I think there's a problem. I think there's a fundamental problem, which is imagining a new type of policing and reinventing policing and defunding policing is all well and good, but it just kind of leads to the shit show that LA's becoming and New York was, and it is re-becoming again.
It's because we have tasked police officers. Well, look, everybody can talk defund police all they want. They should be defunding the prosecutor's office. Prosecutors' offices, if they had a budget that they had to hew to and that they didn't have kind of this unlimited checkbook, you would find that they wouldn't tolerate some of the stuff that happens. And by the way, cops are not, these are the guys who are trained to become a police officer are not people who can deal with the severe mental health problems that are happening on the streets. These are people who are seriously in psychosis. I mean, there are the woman who we've got on tape, which we'll show next week, who attacked one of the women who works for me in front of Tenny. That woman is in serious psychosis. She had been chasing, I'm not kidding you, chasing another woman who was jogging downtown with a knife 2 hours before. And it's like, live or let live, you know? I mean, it's just, or drive by and wave. Cops can't deal with that. They don't know how to deal with that. That's so far outside of anything they know what to deal with. But we have decided that we're going to just abandon the mental health system. We're not going to, we've got I could go on forever about it, but we've got this Lanham-Petries Act, which is idiotic, which means you can't hold anybody for more than 72 hours, even when they're completely disintegrating psychologically. And we've decided we're going to just leave them on the streets to fend for themselves. That's not protecting them. That's not treating them with dignity.
Well, it's not governing. All right, let me hit our last spot. Madison Reed, Mr. Working from home, starting to look at staring at your coworkers' gray hair on those video calls, thinking about getting a little coloring in. Not alone. Madison Reed, Mr. Gray Blending, natural color for your hair and for your beard as well. I saw before and after shots, and they do the job. They work. It looks great. No shoe polish look here, baby. Maybe you just want a little more pepper and a little less salt. Madison Reed, mister. Makes it easy. Find your color and match it. You do it easily on the website. It's quick and easy. Just apply the color gel to dry hair. Then the activator, wait 10 minutes, rinse it out, and shampoo. You're done. Bob's your uncle, and you look 10 years younger. Plus, they deliver right to your door. That's Madison Reed Mister. Right, Gary?
That's right. Go to MadisonReedMr.com. That's MadisonReedMR.com. And use code ADAM for 10% off plus free shipping on your first box. Again, that's code ADAM.
All right, I'm going to be in Dallas tonight, as you hear this, at the Addison Improv. I don't know where Mark's going to be, but if he's going to be...
Hopefully, as you hear this, I've flown you there.
God, that'd be great. Go, you can yell at Jerry Jones while I'm doing jokes up at the Addison Improv. And you also heading back July 31st to San Antonio at Laugh Out Loud, and then... through the 1st of August. You go to adamcarolla.com for all the live shows and get my book. I'm your emotional support animal. What do you got, Mark?
Palm Springs, get down there, sweat out the toxins, stop by the Gigi's restaurant, go to the Capri, the pop-up Naya in the Hamptons. That's the place to be right now. I see some of Zapata's artwork or his mural, which I think he's got on the mural is "Kiss me like you miss me and fuck you like you hate me," which I just think is like it's a pretty good mantra. It should be a bumper sticker. And Casa Tropicana in San Clemente, Gary's favorite place to go spend a little bit of time. Go down to Orange County. Don't wear your mask. Get embraced. And come downtown to 10E or and get chased by a homeless woman with a knife, or go on to Engine Company 28 and sit al fresco and watch the riots walk by.
Al Hobo. So until next time, Adam Carolla for Alan Dershowitz and Mark Garriga saying mahalo.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Tune in next Saturday for an all-new episode.